Hello, and on behalf of all of us here at MacKillop Today, I would like to warmly welcome you to this special online event. My name is Elizabeth Fegan, and I'm the Supporter Relations Group Leader here at MacKillop Today. I'd like to begin our session by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the various lands from which we meet. We pay our respects to elders and leaders past, present and emerging, and we acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to life in our regions and our communities. This event is our opportunity to show you the difference your support has made over the past year. We're so glad so many of you could join us today, and I would like to offer our heartfelt gratitude for your unwavering commitment to the ongoing work of MacKillop Today throughout another difficult year. By way of housekeeping, I'd like to advise you cannot be seen or heard by the hosts or any of the guests today. So if you do have any issues, or better still, if you have any questions that you would like to ask at the end of the session, please use the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of your screen in the middle. I'd like to mention that we also have a number of supporters joining us by phone today. So we will do our very best for those of you who are calling in to make sure that this session is easy to follow, even without video. This afternoon, you'll be hearing from our CEO, Jane Woolford, who will talk about the challenges and achievements of the past year and provide an update on the countries where we work. So over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And welcome everyone this afternoon to this session. It's really great to be here with you and to have another opportunity to meet with you all and to share our work with you. At this time of year, we find ourselves busy as usual, but we also find ourselves being rather reflective. We've finished preparing our annual report on the previous financial year, and that'll be available to you later this month, including online. And because of that, we've been speaking with our partners who've been reporting into us on all the impacts of the programs we're supporting in various countries. And so on reflection and looking towards the end of the calendar year, Christmas is coming. It is a natural time to be evaluating what we've achieved, evaluating the challenges, and also really celebrating some of the good news, because there has been still good news. At this time of great uncertainty, in this second year we've faced with the pandemic, we've been deeply touched by the generosity of our supporters. You have remained committed to our cause. Thank you for all your kindness, for your generosity, and for your ongoing concern for others. We're grateful for the financial support and also really grateful for the good wishes, the messages I receive from time to time, the notes that people are praying for us and for our work. It really means a great deal to us. We couldn't talk about this last year without talking about COVID-19, at least to start with. This continues to be a challenge for us. And to start the session, we'd like to first show you a video about the impact of the pandemic in the countries in which we work. So now you'll hear a little bit from some of our staff and from one of the sisters in Peru, talking about some of the experiences that our communities, that the people we work with have had.
Since 2020, COVID-19 has impacted countries throughout the world. During 2021, the pandemic continued to bring numerous challenges to the communities that MacKillop Today works with.
COVID is, we're sort of pleased that at the moment our COVID numbers are going down. I mean, I think you'd still be horrified at the numbers compared to Australia, because like yesterday, there were 970 something new cases, but there were only 53 new deaths. Now, we say only because we've been used to having hundreds and hundreds of deaths a day. Our country has the dubious honour of having the most deaths per capita in the whole world. If you look at it, we have 5,895 deaths per million people. So that's huge. Peru, it has the greatest number of orphans due to COVID deaths. So that's another whole problem, obviously, for those children, for the government, how to support them, for their families, their extended families. Generally, because of the pandemic, the people have, the poverty line, the number of people below the poverty line, which was improving significantly over the last 10 or 20 years, has dropped right down again. There's great unemployment.
We did start to see a rise in cases in March this year in 2021, and that there were a number of lockdowns and restrictions that followed that. Then there was another spike in cases around August, with quite high numbers in August. But luckily, because there was quite quick action from the Timor-Leste government in putting in place lockdowns and restrictions of travel between municipalities, it meant that the case numbers were controlled quite quickly. And now cases are at a very low rate, and vaccine uptake has been quite good.
During the COVID pandemic, the financial inclusion team in Australia has seen more demand for loans, with clients experiencing job loss and reduction in hours. Following the end of the COVID government supplement, loan applications increased, but the changes in the mental health of those we support has been one of the biggest things. The ups and the downs at the moment are huge and very confronting. People are really, really desperate right now, and they want it done today. At the beginning of the pandemic, the team were able to do money coaching courses because we could see there would be higher demand and emotional drain on people. The team did additional education to give them tools and resources to support people and be able to connect them with the right places that can help them.
Fiji has faced a number of different challenges throughout 2021. In December and January, there were 2 tropical cyclones that were quite devastating to the country and took a while to rebuild from. There was a serious spike in cases around June, where the country then got up to points of facing up to 1,000 or over 1,000 new cases a day. Now, as of today, there is over 80% of the country's population vaccinated, which means that Fiji is now opening up its borders to international travel, and things are starting to return to a certain level of normalcy, which is fantastic for the country and for the communities that we work in. Papua New Guinea was quite lucky in terms of not having too many cases of COVID towards the beginning of the pandemic. However, in 2021, there have been a couple of waves of COVID facing the country. The challenge in Papua New Guinea is the strain on health resources and on the health system, but also there is a real hesitancy to the vaccine. And so currently Papua New Guinea sits at the lowest rate of the population being vaccinated, only 1.5% of the population having received the vaccine. And there's a number of reasons for that, but predominantly there is a real hesitancy and there's a lot of misinformation being spread. So there's a lot of distrust in the community towards the vaccine and receiving the vaccine, which means that unfortunately case numbers are not decreasing at the moment and are still quite high, and so that demand on the health system is still quite serious.
So you can see there some of the impacts of the pandemic and of severe weather. I promise you it's not all bad news today, but to wrap up some of the impacts, you would recall for those supporters who were here at our last session meeting Alipio Baltazar, our country director in Timor-Leste, and he told us more about the heavy rains that had hit the country in March and April this year, resulting in the flash floods and the landslides. In that tragedy, or that natural disaster, the capital Dili really suffered. There were over 40 deaths, and 14,000 people were displaced. That included some of our own staff. We have over 40 staff who are all Timorese, local staff in country there, working for Mary MacKillop Today. And some of them actually lost many of their possessions, and a couple even lost their whole homes. So we were able to personally support them with the help of some of the sisters. And I think the amazing thing about the impact this year has been to see our staff, both here in Australia and certainly in Timor, and our partners in the other countries, and their response. You know, our Timorese staff, despite having their own homes ruined, were very quickly back to work and very, very keen to do whatever they could to help the broader community and to make sure our programs were back and running as soon as possible. So it's just been extraordinary to see. It's a privilege to work here, and I think that everybody feels that way and really gives. Some of the other impacts on us as an organisation, of course, has been that because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to travel out of Australia. So it's really pushed us in new ways to be innovative and to look at how we might do some of the activities that we'd normally do by being there ourselves in country. We haven't been able to go and conduct our monitoring visits and our visits that show solidarity in person, to evaluate our programs in person. And so we're very, very grateful for technology. What a gift it is, because the team here have been holding really regular meetings with the teams overseas and with the partners. We've been having training workshops on Zoom, and they've gone really, really well. We've just been there to chat often. You know, we've had staff meetings here where we've had some of our partners, or perhaps one of the sisters in Peru, dialing in and just talking to us about what's going on, what's the latest. And I'd have to say that some of the feeling of solidarity that's left us with here has been greater in some ways than if we'd been there ourselves. And it's meant that everyone's been able to participate in those sessions. So in many ways, we've been able to build solidarity and that feeling of team connection to our programs. And we've very much heard back from the staff overseas and the teams overseas how much they've appreciated that, how much they've appreciated the more regular communication, but in a different space. So there's been surprises there. And I think the other thing too is that it's built the staff capacity overseas. You know, we've learned we don't have to do it all for ourselves. If anything, we may have fast-tracked some of our ultimate goals, which are that our teams on the ground are doing this work. The teams on the ground are being pushed to do more of the evaluation, more of the monitoring. We've got technology in place to collect data, and they've embraced that and are using that and sending that back to us. So perhaps, you know, after this period is over, we'll look back and say, wow, we've really fast-tracked some of the outcomes in this time. So it's been an unusual time, but there's been surprising gifts in that. And there's always hope, the hope that you help provide as well in your support. And I'd like to take you now through some of the good news, some of the achievements that have happened. And there's a series of slides here to help show you some of those outcomes. So what you've helped us achieve. Some of our work has been in, I'll just catch up there with the correct slide. But some of our work has been in humanitarian support. So here at Mary MacKillop Today, we don't consider ourselves to be, strictly speaking, an emergency response agency. We know that there are other agencies who have those specialist skills. And so when disaster strikes, we tend to continue our development and long-term programs in learning and lifelong learning. But this has been a very different response in this kind of a disaster faced with a global pandemic, because this pandemic has impacted everyone. So the very small communities in really remote areas where we work, we have had to change our response a little bit where the need arose, and to help those communities. So in some cases, we have been adapting, pivoting, as they say, our programs a little bit, where we haven't been able to access communities in quite the same way. So we've been providing materials to help children be educated at home because of the pandemic. Like us here in Australia, the communities overseas have had to stay at home. Many children around the world have not been able to attend school. In Peru, they've faced something like 1.5 years of no attendance at school. So in those situations, we've been able to provide materials to educate children at home, to help parents, just like here, cope with the fact that they have become teachers. And so we've built in resources to do some of that work. Then moving on to the next slide. We've been able to provide some humanitarian support, as I said, and that's been something new for us. Following the floods in Timor, the cyclones in Fiji, we were able to reallocate small amounts of funding to humanitarian assistance. So in Fiji, that included things like food, stationery. When kids were going back to school after losing clothing, we were able to provide uniforms through our partnership with Child Benefit, giving children that pride in wearing a uniform and being able to return to school after losing so much. We were able to support counselling through our partner Olafau in Fiji, and provide that to some of the women's leadership participants who were significantly affected. In Timor, as I said, Parents Training Project received food assistance for schools and in the local community. We were able to enhance the project we're already doing in health literacy by also adding to that some support to repairing damaged schools, and that was specifically in the district of Manifahi. We also did repairs where our livelihoods program is concerned in Timor. So we're working with farmers, the majority of whom are women, and make repairs to their fish ponds, where their vanilla crops and their coffee was destroyed. We were able to produce seedlings for them so that they could replant very quickly and get on with their growing programs. Also, in our mobile learning centres and our teacher training and literacy programs, we did some school repairs and some flood response in those areas. We have a really good reputation with government agencies in Timor because of our education program that is so long running and really highly esteemed. So we provided general humanitarian aid to local communities in Dili, and this was coordinated through the Secretary of State of Civil Protection. And so because of our good relationships there, our good reputations, they worked through us to deliver that. On now to, many of you are aware of our First Nations Scholarship Project, and that too has been running for many years. We found this year with the pandemic impacts that social isolation really did impact some of our students, and they found the challenges of online study quite difficult. We know students all over the country had that experience, but it was a common theme for some of our students. Many of them still managed to show remarkable resilience. over 70 continued their studies, and 9 completed their tertiary degrees in this last year. So that was really exciting. One of my own personal highlights this year was when India dropped into the office. She had just completed her medical degree, one of the First Nations students doing that degree. And she dropped in to personally thank us here in the office in North Sydney. She was on her way to start her first rotations in the hospital where she'd been placed, having completed the course. And she said to me, you know, it really was important to receive this scholarship support throughout my medical degree. She said it was not just the fact that I had the financial benefit of it. She said what really made a difference in her mind was knowing that there were people behind her. There was an organisation behind her. And she said that really kept her motivating, knowing that there was someone, a group of people, an organisation who believed in her doing this. And it was that quiet support that really gave her the edge in getting through the exams. So it was really fantastic to meet with her and see the difference that it made. The 2021 financial year also saw the beginning of our partnerships with tertiary institutions with that program. So we're committed now with 3 institutions to deliver that scholarship program. 2 are universities, Deakin University and James Cook University. And then also we've realised the importance of vocational training and vocational scholarships. So we've also started offering those through the North Regional TAFE. And we're finding that's going really well. So on to our no interest loan program that runs, we have a team out in Western New South Wales around the Bathurst area, staff delivering this program. You know, we were told the statistic this week that 1 in 5 households, that's 20% of Australian households currently cannot come up with $2,000 if they needed to in the case of an emergency. So this reveals to us a really significant level of household stress. And that's where our no interest loan program comes into play. It's a program we've found in really high demand this year. We made 1,055 loans through our no interest loan nils program. And of those loans, I thought it was really interesting to discover that 31% of those loans were administered to First Australians, peoples. 61% of the loans went to women, and 35% of the loans were to people receiving disability support. So when we think back to the work that Mary MacKillop herself started and the sisters continued, and we now are working with that legacy, I think we're really hitting the mark there with this program. The program, as you can see there, went into a whole variety of supports to people needing appliances in their home. They take up this loan through finding success with our support to repay the loan. They also receive a credit rating. They receive the positive feeling that comes from being successful finally in paying back a loan and having the benefits of that, and no longer being prey to loan sharks who are hoisting, you know, these high interest rates and people getting themselves into further difficulties and further debt. They're avoiding that by taking on one of our loans. So that's been really, really exciting to see the need for that program and the success with that program. As you heard earlier, the financial inclusion team started to diversify our service and started to run financial budgeting workshops. And I'll talk a little bit about that as being part of what we see as a really important future investment for us. So moving on now to health literacy. You know, when we talk about literacy, when we talk about ongoing learning, we're often talking about language literacy. But health literacy is a very big part of the programs we offer. And one of the highlights for us this year, tying into the COVID pandemic too, is the ongoing program in Timor that we offer there. We were able to add value to the existing health literacy program by not just talking to communities about childhood disease, how to prevent malnutrition, increasing positive health outcomes, but we added also learning around the pandemic, how to prevent the passing on of this horrendous virus. And again, we worked in conjunction with the Ministry of Health, with government in doing that. They entrusted to us the additional role of doing that job of carrying out their health campaigns in targeted communities. And that all comes from having great runs on the board over the years, being relied upon with our good health programs. So we raised awareness in the community of the importance of the AstraZeneca vaccine. That's the vaccine that Timorese were provided with. And we help boost the positive outcomes in that regard. We, of course, managed to conduct our usual literacy programs, as the next slide will show you, with our storybooks. I know you heard about that if you attended our last session. We distributed lots of our high-quality books in the Teted language. We continue to train teachers in Teton literacy in partnership with the Ministry of Education. And we also continued to train volunteer teachers so that they could work particularly in our preschools up there, not our preschools, but the local preschools in Railako and in the Emera municipality. So again, improving the quality of early childhood education so that kids go on to start formal school with much greater success rates, having done this preschool education. In Fiji, similar programs were held. So again, in Fiji, like in Timor, we have a mobile kindy program. And there we had 13 teachers participate in training workshops, and 15 volunteer teachers receive monitoring and mentoring so that they could go and deliver those programs as well. We had learning resources distributed. I mean, what an extraordinary figure. Over 45,000 learning resources were distributed this time. Of course, the need for resources and their distribution to families and communities was particularly pertinent with the pandemic and with stops and starts to some of the usual ways we deliver our program. But nevertheless, we kept it going. One of the highlights was the parent training. And so this training teaches parents a range of simple skills and activities so they could support their children's learning in the home. We covered topics such as literacy, numeracy, storytelling, child protection, of course, and child development. So that continued, and we were very grateful that we could continue that program. We also trained lots of parents and caregivers in Peru. We continued the school agricultural project, where schools which have been closed for a lot of this time were able to continue the agriculture projects. We also enhanced the educational environment for school students with project work to engage parents, to engage the teachers and do further teacher training. One of the mums in that program said, her name's Shirley, she said, they have guided us on how we have to work on different issues with our children at home, how to support them, how to guide them, how to understand them in terms of the context that we are all experiencing. So in Peru as well, moving on to rural areas there, we also did this work in leadership and in livelihood development. So in Peru, we are addressing the skills gap in rural communities. And with this vocational training project, we focus particularly on women and young people. Our partners very much asked us to work alongside them in that way. This is specifically the area they want to develop, and they see where a real difference can be made in their communities. So we help them design and deliver 5 courses to upskill nearly 300 students in trades. And those trades covered sustainable agriculture, tourism, and IT. Some of the teachers were trained in digital platforms and were supplied with IT equipment for classrooms, and also to broadcast informative programs through radio programs. So that was another way we adapted our programs to reach people when they could be at the trainings or receiving this information in person. These scholarships, so there were many programs that covered these areas. Moving on now to the next slide. And we also helped in Timor with many women's programs there, particularly in women's leadership. So what we found is that women are really speaking up and looking to receive extra support in trainings that included basic cooperative training, training in accountability, in numeracy and literacy, because traditionally Timor has had very low rates of literacy, and so there are many adults who are seeking to improve their skills there. Some of the women have undertaken training in tempeh production, tempeh being the soybean cake that provides so much protein and nourishment for families, and which they can start small businesses when they're doing that kind of production in their local communities. And also training women in leadership and gender training. The women we've been working with, more than 1/3 of these women never attended school. So it is really extraordinary that they can receive this support. 48 women in the cooperative that we're working with are receiving a livelihood as a result of participating in this project. So that's a really powerful outcome. So for example, nearly half of them are selling cake and bread as after having done our training. 35% are selling vegetables. Some are running kiosks, some are selling fuel, but they've worked out ways of running their small business and building their skills. It's really exciting to see these outcomes. Furthermore, in Peru, these projects are resulting in strong outcomes and mentoring for women who've decided to take that step in their community of leading in a more formal context. So we've been working with female elected officials and civil society leaders, and also young people who've stepped up into this space by helping them with training and leadership. This is a really important time to be able to do this now, because post-pandemic, you heard Sister Katrina there, with the extraordinary impact on Peru, more than any other country in the world, really. These women and young people will really step up to be leading in their communities, and we want to continue to support them. In Fiji, the Women's Leadership through Empowerment project that our partner Talitha has been delivering has fostered unity within project communities. Again, young women have been trained to become active agents of change. One of the women said to us, these trainings offered, especially the money-minded program, has taught me how to budget money, and also taught me that a way to save money is to plant my own vegetables instead of buying them. It saves money for me and my family, and I can channel those savings into my children's education. I can see myself as a positive role model, especially to young single mothers in my community. So we're receiving great responses that way. What was also really good to hear was one of the male champions in our program. Our partners there take time to really work with men as well, who in turn champion women to be part of this leadership program. And one of the men said, "The participants in my community have been vocal in community meetings and they've gained confidence to know their rights and to speak up about it." And he said that with a very celebratory tone. So what's coming next? There have, as I say, been great gains this year despite the challenges. What's next? Well, we know that recovery from the pandemic will be a slow thing. It will be a long recovery for many of the countries we work in, but we want to stay true to Mary MacKillop and the sisters and the work they have founded. We see ourselves very much as the legacy of this work. So we will continue to focus on the margins, where the needs are greatest. This is slow work, we know. It takes great dedication, but we also know it brings its rewards all along through this process. And we thank you for entrusting us and working with us over a long period of time. So in this progress, I don't really think we know all the challenges coming our way. But some of them are really obvious, especially when you look back to that early video and what our staff and partners shared with you. We know that the loss of education for young children will be really significant, and that has an impact. We know that there's the increased financial hardship on families, which leads to other complexities. We know the loss of life must have an impact. Just that reality for Peru having the highest number of COVID orphans is extraordinary. So we will continue our programs. Many of our programs are undergoing evaluation now. We tend to work in a 3-year commitment. And so now we're in the 3rd year of many of our programs. We have partners on the ground who are conducting evaluations of those programs, and that will pave the way to see where we place our energies best come July 1 next year. We know that, for example, in Timor, we will be working again with teacher training, with parent training. We know that wraparound kind of support is really, really important and reaps rewards. So we will look at the areas, the remote areas that we'll commit to for another 3-year period. In Australia, we know we have a new program with nils for cars. Many of those who are under financial strain need to make sure they can put their car on the road. So the loans we provide, the no interest loans, often go to getting registration for a car so that people can ensure they can get to work, they can travel to job interviews, but they can actually get to their jobs and maintain an income. With our nils program as well, we know it's not just about offering a loan and supporting people to repay a loan. We know that budgeting is really important, and we want to be able to support people in what they learn. So the team there have developed a training program. As we are able to get back out into the community, we will deliver that program in financial literacy. And we know those workshops, working with the most vulnerable, with marginalised people, with our First Australians communities, with students in schools, that training is essential to people not being taken advantage of by the loan sharks who end up just, offering really high loan interest and creating more debt for individuals. We want to be able to help them avoid those traps and to budget and build their livelihoods and build the advantages for their communities into the future. We will continue with our community grants and offer another round so that communities all over Australia can bring about real change right in their local grassroots area with the advantage of quite small loans. So there are many, many things we will be keeping busy with, and we know that we do that with your support entrusted to us. We'll continue throughout all those programs, focusing on child safeguarding, child protection, we look forward to doing more of our work and building upon our work in Papua New Guinea, particularly for children with disability who would otherwise not have access to school education. That's a really important program for us that we're about to really invest in and really build with the support of our Callan services on the ground, our partnership there, who work in conjunction with the Ministry of Education. So I want to leave some time for anyone who may have a couple of questions. But overall, I want to thank you for your support to us, your commitment, continuing to walk alongside us for another year. There have been many, many good news stories that we've been able to achieve with you. From time to time, some of our supporters find themselves with a particular interest in a program area. If you find you do have a special interest and you have the means to support us in a significant way, we also welcome a chat because there's always possibilities. There are always programs we can build upon. There are new directions we want to go. So do get in touch. But every level of support is greatly appreciated by us for this work and by our partners overseas and our staff here in Australia. It might seem a bit early to say so, but because this is our last session of this nature for 2021, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas, a safe year next year for all of us who've inevitably had impacts from this pandemic. We hope and pray for a better year for you too as our supporters. But I'll leave it there and pass back to Elizabeth to lead us through any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane. It is time for questions now. So I wonder if anybody would like to have anything posed to Jane, would like to hear Jane directly answer anything that's come to mind throughout this presentation, please do pop it in the Q&A or the chat box, and I'll be able to read that out so that Jane can answer that. I have had one that came in earlier, so I do have one here to start off with, Jane. One of our supporters has asked you, when do you think you will be back overseas? When do you think we will get back to the various countries that we're working in?
Yes, that's a good question and a very timely one. I've been speaking with our insurers this week about that. It's a tricky question, and it will really depend from country to country when we go and visit again. As I said earlier, I think one of the most important things we've learned this year is that it's not all about us. Community development is not all about us bringing the solutions, but it is important to visit. It is important to have those visits of solidarity, to evaluate, to monitor the programs, and to ensure everything is going well. So we are looking at, in a country, I guess I'd start with the most difficult first and say that in Papua New Guinea right now, with the incredibly low rates of vaccination, the very high rates of illness, to pay a visit there, would only provide more work for our partners on the ground. And as I say, we can stay in really close contact with them via Zoom and via phone. So it will be quite some time before we visit there, and I couldn't really say when. However, in Timor, because of the high vaccination rates and the sudden improvements in Fiji, I do feel like in the next 6 months we will be able to visit. I'll be able to meet with partners for the first time myself in person. And we'll be able to monitor some of the programs there and have some good sit-down chats. And we're really looking forward to that. In Peru, the illness has really had its impact. But I guess with our own vaccination rates, we will be able to visit, in the next 6 months, I hope very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane.
I should say too that as soon as we can visit anyone amongst us, maybe Tessa on our international programs team, we will hold a session like this and share everything we've been able to experience in person. Lots of photographs, lots of footage from the ground. It will be, really looking forward to that.
Thank you, Jane. We've had some more questions come in, so I'm trying to read and listen at the same time. I don't know if we have any information on this, but one of our supporters is mentioned that apparently Timor has not been receiving mail from Australia, which is something that I wasn't aware of. And I don't know if you know anything about that situation, Jane.
I don't, as a matter of fact, because we're in constant contact, we don't rely on mail so much. It's something, if they would like to get in touch, I can certainly ask our programs team here. I can drop a line to Alipio up there in Dilly, and I'm sure he's always across the detail of what's going on, and we could probably get a quick response to that. So for that person inquiring, just drop us an email to hello@marymckillop.org.au, and we can find out for you.
Thank you. We've got a question here about the nils program. So one of our supporters is very interested to know what type of businesses are supported and what kind of guidelines are there on the loan. So yeah, I wonder if you could address that, because they're for individuals as opposed to businesses, aren't they, Jane?
They are indeed. So the idea of the loans is to work with individuals who are on very low incomes and who are experiencing various forms of hardship, to provide them a small loan of just a few $1,000s, but attached to that loan is no interest. And the idea of that is that to be able to, there is criteria to be able to apply for one of those loans, and one of our staff work individually with each applicant through that. So we want to be able to make sure that a person can be successful in being able to meet the conditions of the loan. So that is to be able to, over a period of time that we work out with you, so that it doesn't provide lots of additional pressure for a person, but that they can be successful in paying back the loan. And by doing that, we work with a person to look at their income, to look at their existing commitments and bills. We often find that one of the individuals we're working with has a lot of existing debt that's a problem, but also is debt that can be solved. So we often find that people are being taken advantage of. Their phone bills may have really rocketed, and because they haven't made a payment at a particular time, a whole lot of interest comes into play, and their debt spirals downwards. So what we aim to do is advocate on behalf of that person or with that person to sort out where those kinds of heavy bills are not, that should not be in existence, and we get that solved, and then we support that person with a loan without the high interest rates they'd otherwise experience, to be able to have the advantage of something. So I'll give you a practical example might help. I met a woman up in the Bathurst region who was a grandmother of a young child who had a severe disability. It was the middle of summer, and in Western New South Wales, you know how hot it can get there. This woman's air conditioner had broken down. Now, we might not think about an air conditioner as absolutely essential, but in her case, in midsummer, with a child whose disability meant that when she became overheated, she would hit her head against a wall and do harm to herself. This was the kind of disability she had. So the woman reached out to us. She had no available cash. We were able to very quickly provide her with a small loan to buy an air conditioner that was installed very quickly, solving that problem. And in speaking with that woman, she was incredibly grateful to have that immediate relief, which brought safety and protection for her grandchild. So they're the kinds of circumstances we may be looking at with the loans. They're not so much business loans, but individual loans. And they not only provide the loan, as I said, they provide a means by which people can experience success in paying back a loan and learning some budgeting techniques on the way and improve their overall economic benefit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. I think we've come to the end of the little flurry of questions there. So that does bring us to the end of our event. I hope that everybody has found this update to be both interesting and inspiring. I'd like to once again offer thanks on behalf of all of us at Mary MacKillop Today and on behalf of the many participants who benefit from your dedication and your generosity. Thank you so much for helping to continue St Mary's life-changing work. Now, to finish up, I'd like to leave you with a short farewell song from our friends in Fiji. So thank you again and enjoy.
Hello everyone, this is our goodbye song in Ethiopian language, Rambian and in English.